Hello and welcome to the Ultra Wizard Ramble podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Reagan, and today I'm here with two good buddies of mine, Jeff Stern, Chris Brown, and we're going to chat all things Headlands 50K. We're going to unpackage a little bit about Ultra Running Magazine's new announcement, about the old school Ultras, and we're just going to chat back and forth. It's the holiday season, and I'm looking forward to talk with my two buddies. Guys, how you doing?
Yeah, baby. You're great.
Hanging in there, doing well, yeah.
Awesome. Jeff, you moved into a new spot out in California?
Yeah, just across town. Nothing, no big serious move, but yeah, into a little bit bigger place so I can spread out and host people and yeah, live my life.
Nice. Awesome. Chris, you having a good holiday season, man? Are you still up in Seattle or?
Yeah, dude. I'm back in Seattle. Got to spend a little more time here than usual. Normally I'm kind of in and out, but got to relax a little more this time. See some of my old favorite restaurants and see some more friends. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Awesome stuff. We're back down in Savannah. We had crazy weather in PA. It was like 60 degrees on Christmas Day. Super enjoyable. Really, really nice to visit kind of the old stomping grounds and get some hill training in, guys. I know it wouldn't be much for you, but nice to be out of the southeast for a minute and find some hills.
I used to coach a guy who lived up in that area, and we had to get pretty creative on the on hill training to get ready for some of those more mountainous ultras. But you know, hill reps on a busy or rather a steep city street, it'll get the job done if you need it to.
You know what? I see a lot of our people doing hiking on treadmills too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, super useful.
I mean, I think coming from the East Coast, it's just highly beneficial as an athlete. Coming to run anything related to Western states or anything along the American River, like we just don't have really long climbs, guys. That's kind of one of the main MOs, I think, on the East Coast, at least in the Southeast. Got a lot of punchy climbs, but not tons of really long ones.
Yeah, every year there's that conversation in the lead up to Western states about that kind of like unknown East Coast guy or girl coming out to run the race, and you know, high expectations for them. And sorry to say, man, they've been not showing up so far. Obviously some notable exceptions, but as far as having a reputation for it, there's still some building to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's difficult to get ready for that 17-mile downhill section, right? And what do you do coming from the East Coast? I mean, Blue Ridge Parkway, there are very few areas other than Western States Training Camp. I think that's one of the most valuable things you can do as an athlete, getting ready for states at least. So, well, today we're super excited. We're announcing a new partnership. Me and Chris work together as coaches. We also work with Nicole Manette, and we're going to be partnering with Jeff, your race, the Headlands 50K. Really excited for the partnership and stoked to work with you guys.
Yeah, I think it'll be super rad. The race has a pretty long history, and Chris has some history at the race. It'll be a fun year for sure.
Yeah, you and I took a wrong turn there together, which kind of ended our hopes of having a perfect day right off the bat. But still, you know, I was there for the course, as you know, everyone should be, and still managed to scrape together a decent performance. Yeah, I mean, those trails are legendary. There's plenty of races out there, but I'm honestly surprised there aren't more. Maybe that has to do with the difficulty of permitting that particular area, which we don't have to go
more about that.
Yeah, but it's just, yeah, that's an all-time classic. It's been around forever. I remember when I was first getting into ultra running, looking back at some of the results that went down and have gone down at that race, and it's just like, you know, the past performances list is just a who's who of the ultra running elite for the past, how many years?
22 years this year.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. And it is funny, like, if you don't know the history of it going in and out of being a national championship or any sort of series race, it's like, you know, one year it's 20 deep in the men's and women's field of super, super high-end athletes. And then the next year it's like, you don't really recognize any names. And it's a little weird to look at if you don't know that's part of the history. But yeah, some just unreal performances have gone down there. And honestly, I think some career highlights, like,
Cody Reed had an amazing day there, right?
That's one of Cody's best races ever. I don't want to discount his runs out at like Cape Town. He's done some amazing stuff internationally,
sure.
And you know, finishing 7th or 6th or whatever it was at States, like that's huge. But his Headlands 50K was gnarly. And I think I want to say Sensman beat Frericks there one year, or at least it was close. I think they were right next to each other, and Brian Gillis was right there with him. He might have even beat both of those guys. I don't remember exactly the results, but probably Brian Gillis's best result ever. But anyway, yeah, super cool history there and awesome performances.
Yeah, I think the race you're talking about was 2016 when Cody won and won the national championship. And that was the last year it was the national championship. And I'm pretty sure the field was very stacked. Senseman was there. Runners like Dylan Bowman were there. Megan Roche set the course record on the women's side. So
Yeah.
it was super deep, but it hasn't really had that depth since then. I know we ran it in 2017 the next year. It was, moderately deep thanks to you showing up. But
Well, I mean, you were there, I was there. Neither of us won. Chikara Omine, maybe the most underrated ultra runner in America,
Oh my gosh.
ended up winning it. But you look farther into Varner was there. He was at the peak of his powers, maybe coming off a little injury. Kate Elliott. Who else was there? Wasn't Ashley Nordell there? Maybe not.
No, the runner that lived down in San Ynez, woman who
Oh,
was
yeah,
on Nike
yeah.
Trail for a while.
Yeah, Pat, you would know her. Why is her name slipping away from me? She was a road runner. Oh my God.
She's done Western before, I think, too, right?
Yeah, but she was on some world's teams on road.
We've got
stuff.
our in-house statistician, Jeff Stern, there typing it up.
Carolyn Bowler. You caught
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
man. Wow,
Yeah.
she had some great runs at Western States too, man.
Yeah,
Did
for
she?
sure.
Yeah, she was top 10 at least 2 times, if not 3, right, Jeff?
All right, let's check. No, top 10 once and 12th the second time.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay.
I always thought it was
Yeah, I think she also broke Ann Traysen's 50-mile record at Brazos Bend for 50-mile trail.
I mean,
the year directly after
5:48:01 in 2016. That's a pretty fast 50-miler.
Smoking for sure. Really cool. So Jeff, this is a big year for Headlands 50K. Last year was a big year for you as a person. Not only a professional runner, new race director. So tell us in general. We know more recent times about the Headlands 50K, but goes back 22 years, right? And of the 22, 8 years being a national championship.
Yeah, actually, I think it's 9 years. I had to. When I was submitting the bid for this year, I had to go back and figure it out. It was 2002, 2003, 2005, 2006, and 2007. Then kind of a bigger gap in 2013, 2015, and 2016. So yeah, this year will be the 9th year. And yeah, it actually started out as the Point Reyes 50K, is my understanding. Started by Tamalpa Runners, which is the longest running running club here in the North Bay, Marin County. And then that converted over to a national seashore, national park, and they didn't allow events there anymore. So it moved into the more of the Headlands zone. But yeah, I mean, just a super rad history. Recently, the course has basically stayed the same. And I say recently, like the last, I guess, 20-ish years, 19, 20 years. And it's this epic loop that Chris knows about where you just run an awesome kind of 25K route through the Marin Headlands. And then you dip back down and kind of run right adjacent to Muir Woods and up the historic Dipsy Trail and do kind of another 25K loop down into Stinson Beach and then back up on the shoulder of Mount Tam and drop down into the start finish area right next to Muir Beach. So super cool route beyond the history and the fast times. And yeah, just really, really special for me last year to bring it back and be the RD, as Chris alluded to earlier. Or maybe didn't really mention, but that race was my first 50K ever, which was eye-opening, so cool, because we turned it into a 55K very early on. When you're running your longest distance ever, you don't really need to add on an extra few miles, but that's what we did. So at the time, it was my longest run and definitely hardest effort I think I'd ever put out there. But to have it come full circle and become the race director last year was super special. And the community here, San Francisco Running Company and Tamalpa and all the Bay Area runners were really excited to have it come back. And it totally exceeded my expectations. I think I probably mentioned to you, Pat, definitely one of the highlights of my life in general was race directing. It's just super special to give back in that way and see so many people enjoying the trails that, you know, I grew up on and I love so much. So really an awesome day. And then, you know, coming into 2024, really exciting to have it become the national championship for the 9th time. And I think especially, and we'll talk about this, like where we're at in the sport and what's going on, like having a mid-August race that's a national championship that has some allure and some prize money and a lot of history and a location that's easy for people to get to. I'm expecting we're just going to blow it out of the water, and then having this partnership with their coaching business. I think there's just a lot of awesome things that are in the pipeline, and super stoked for the upcoming year and everything that is ahead.
Yeah, so let's talk about the course a little bit more, just in terms of the challenges like a runner may have, you know, coming from different regions. You guys both know a ton about this course. You know, of course, it touches like what some of the Dipsea, right? So you touch a little stairs, you touch some beachfront, like just in general, what are maybe some of the challenges for someone coming from a flatter area with running this course in terms of either length of climb or technicality?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of climbing, but like fast runnable climbing, like nothing that's ever too steep where you're really going to come to a super slow hike. I think there's sections that, you know, hiking is important, but a very like runnable course, lots of fast fire road downhills, a few technical kind of stair rooted sections, good amount of single track. You're kind of always shifting gears. I think if you look at the profile, there are a couple pretty big climbs, like 1,000-foot climbs, but then there's just lots of like undulation. You mentioned like running next to the beach. You run right by on coastal, right by Pirates Cove, and you're just like constantly up and down, and super pretty views of the Farallon Islands and the Pacific. And but yeah, you're just like, there's really no time to let off the gas on this course. It's like, it's all out, and you know, there's really no flat sections. I mean, that's one thing it doesn't have. I mean, there's a couple tiny little transitions through aid stations, but like you're either running up or down basically the whole time. And you know, having it be kind of the cool loop is like you're always seeing something new. Like there's no like doubling back really on anything, which I think is pretty special too.
I think when we talk about destination races, we often think overseas. We don't necessarily always think these beautiful regions in our own country, right? And, you know, maybe a short plane ride away, or we don't talk about historic Appalachia necessarily, but this is a classic ultra, like right within our borders. And, you know, for you guys, I think, and for myself, it's been really valuable to get to see standalone races like this still around, right? And for people to be like, I'm really excited about ultras in my region, that ultras in my region still exist, right? That I could maybe ride my bike to, or that I could drive, you know, 45 minutes and get to an ultra. Have you seen that with races in general in your region that have succeeded over time, Jeff, that people in your community and also people that are looking to come to like a destination race are stoked about, and, you know, in relation to the Headlands 50K?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're really fortunate in the Bay Area. Obviously, there's so many trails. You know, Chris is familiar with the East Bay Skyline and all of those trails over there, Redwood Regional, the South Bay, Santa Cruz, and there's a lot of historic races. The Quad Dipsea just celebrated the 40th annual last month in November. Skyline 50K, so cool. Dick Collins Fire Trails. I mean, there's so many historic races. So I think you get a lot of people who just run the races year after year after year. I know there are a couple people that ran their 28th and 25th Quad Dipseas this year, which is just mind-boggling. But then you also get people that hear about them and are like, man, I want to drive up from Southern California, or I want to, you know, fly in from Seattle or Colorado or something like that. So yeah, I think it's super special place to put on races. And then the Headlands, in, you know, being more specific, just again, that history of the national championship. I think, you know, looking at the people who've run it and how deep the fields have been and how consistent they've been over time, it makes it really special and a draw for runners from all over the place as a destination race.
I think one of the coolest thing about it being the national championships is you always get maybe one or two marathon, half marathon specialists that are curious about ultras that maybe loved cross country at either the high school level or the collegiate level or much earlier in their life, trying their hand at an ultra for the first time. And this is, of course, like you said, with the runnability of it, you have the potential for it to be just an amazing national championship this year, right? Like I feel like ultra running is exploding in that way. There's tons of interest and people are more attracted to getting out in the woods and getting out in the forest and spending time. And that's a huge draw here as well, right?
Totally. Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see who from the Bay Area and even beyond is like, man, I want the Headlands 50K to be my first ultra. Actually, that's a good point. I think last year, 17% of our finishers, it was their first 50K ever, which was really a point of pride for me. I'm like, wow, we recruited a awesome first time field. Like bringing newcomers into the ultra running family and fold is really special. And again, having it been my first ultra 6 years ago, I think that is super near and dear to me. And so, yeah, I would love to have a bunch of, well, it doesn't matter whether you're fast or slow. I think that's the whole point, is you celebrate people from the front to the back. But yeah, it is super cool to see someone be like, yeah, I can run a 2:15, 2:10 marathon. And now there's a national championship in my backyard that's, you know, a little bit longer. I'm going to give it a go. And maybe that's a future rising star in our ever growing sport. So that's super rad as well.
Chris, what's always attracted you to 50Ks? When I think of you, buddy, I think of you as someone that does a lot of 50Ks in a build to kind of an important, maybe a race for your season. But in California, I mean, you run a whole lot of them, including a couple of the races in the new old school ultras kind of collective announced this week. Tell us a little bit about what attracted you to not only Headlands, but Chuckanut, which is also a part of the series, not necessarily the series, but the standalones in the old school ultras. Like why the 50K distance for you?
I think the 50K distance it's a really nice sort of Goldilocks distance where, yeah, it's an ultra. And if you're an accomplished ultra runner, you're not going to get beat by a 10K runner or a half marathon specialist at a 50K. It's not going to happen. It's far enough to weed out the folks who are not ultra runners. But at the same time, they're aggressive from the start. Like you're going out pretty hard. A race like Chuckanut, it's flat for the first 10K. Jeff and I actually ran that together last March. And, we were going out conservative and looking down at our watches, just trying not to run under 6-minute miles, which is just bonkers for, what ends up being a really hilly, rather technical trail run. But yeah, I just feel like it hits that sweet spot of you're really racing the whole time. But it does reward people who have endurance and are grinders rather than just speedsters. And I feel like specifically Headlands is exactly that. It's that Goldilocks spot in terms of technicality, in terms of climbing. It's low elevation, so it doesn't weed anybody out by being in the mountains. It's just crazy when you think about how much vert is in this race, how fast the times are. Like people are running in the 3:30s, if not faster, for this race. And what is there, 5,000 plus feet of climbing, something like that? It's just like, it doesn't make sense on paper how they do it. And it kind of defines that California carpet trails or whatever you want to call them. It's crazy how hard you can push yourself on a course like this when you don't, the downhills are not steep enough that you get to recover because you can really hammer them. And the climbs are not steep enough that you really have to hike, at least kind of at the front end of the pack. So you are really able, the course doesn't hold you back. It allows you to push. And that makes for a really fun experience.
It forces you to push, I would say. I mean,
sure, maybe not as much as Way Too Cool, right? Where you have closer to 3,500 feet or 4,000 feet. But yeah, maybe from a perceived exertion standpoint, you're pushing just as hard, but with more climbing, which we've all been there, right? You can blow yourself up in a 50K with that much climbing and that hard of a push.
Yeah. I mean, I think Andy Wacker's CR from 2015, you can find his file online, and I'm pretty sure his average pace is under 7 minutes per mile for the entire thing.
With 5,000 feet. I mean,
it's closer to 6, to be completely honest. It's like 55. So, every downhill you're looking at low to mid 5-minute miles, and the uphills, all the runnable ones are in like the high 7s or low 8s, basically.
Yeah, Pat, I think if you're really splitting hairs, you could differentiate this from Way Too Cool, but honestly, I'd put it right in the same category. Chuckanut, Way Too Cool, some Akira's races, Sean O'Brien, Ray
Sure.
Miller, Leona Divide. This is what we talk about when we talk about like hilly, low elevation, fast, non-technical California ultra running.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, this is one of the classic ones. I mean, we could look at some on the East Coast as well, which are very hard to compare, right? But there are definitely some classic ones. In Alabama, right? Jeff, you got one coming up. Yeah, where are you racing in January, Jeff? And why?
The Mountain Mist 50K.
Sure.
Dink Taylor, pretty legendary guy in the sport. I think he's maybe 60 now. He still runs JFK every year. Super nice guy if you've ever come across him. He owns Fleet Feet Huntsville, and he started this race in Huntsville 30 years ago. This is the 30th annual this upcoming year in 2024, because there were no trail races in Alabama, or at least that's the story he tells. So like he is the reason why trail running is in Alabama. Maybe not the only reason why, but he's a big part of it. And here he is 30 years later, RDing the same race that he started. And that's super cool. I love that.
And similarly, we've seen guys like David Riddle, Matt Flaherty come to races like this and lay down insane times. And you look at the profiles, guys, right? Similar to Headlands, to Chuckanut. You look at Mount Miss and you say, how is the record around 3:30, right? Not even, and you have to consider the technicality there as well, and maybe some of the icy conditions, stump jump as well in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So when I think of classic ultras, like not only, the ones in my region, the Southeast, like they're comparable front to back of like, on that day, how would David Riddle have stood against, Cody Reed on that day at Tamalpa, right? Like I always like to look at the different routes and think about, I don't know, Patrick Smythe's 303 at Way Too Cool, right? Like how do those compare? But very interesting to break down 50Ks and, see, well, most ultra runners, they get their start at those distances, right? All right. So Jeff, big announcement this week for you guys at Ultra Running Mag. I think the three of us all love these classic ultras. We've all run them. I think of, some of the ones that I've run, like Yeti 100, which is a little newer, or, Javelina now is extremely historic when it comes to the 100-mile distance. I think of, the down home feel of events like Mad City 100K that I've got to run. Just that classic feel of an ultra where you show up and it's a standalone, right? It's a race that's existed for a really long time. I think we all have those ultras in our regions or those that mean a lot to us. What was the impetus for, the old school ultras? Like, how did you and Ultra Running Mag come to kind of decide upon the events? I know Stroll and Jim is a part of it. I know GFK is a part of it. These are races that people have recognized in the sport for years. Tell us a little bit about the why of the whole.
Come on. What do you, the why, dude? Come on. Don't be in the bush here, brother. Like, this is the most provoked article of all time in that magazine. Like, come on. Like, the context is obvious. We're in a world where UTMB, for better or worse, has, well, for worse lately, they have crossed some lines. We're pissed off, and we're banding together as a community to cherish the other sorts of races that we love. And so Ultra Running Magazine wrote an article highlighting some of the races that are the antithesis of UTMB, right? Here's where we're at.
That's fair to say, but I think I need to provide a little bit more backstory, because if I'm being 100% honest, I had this idea last year at this time when we were talking about reviving the Headlands, and it was just too much to bite off this in 2023 for me to figure out how to do this and RD and everything else I do. So it kind of got put in the back burner. But you could go into my Google Docs and there is a document that is like Old School Ultras created December 2022. So
yeah,
Chris is correct in what he said, but that was not like
basically I had the axe and I was hacking at the fuse and Chris was waiting there with the book of matches, dude. Yeah, I knew that's the way it would go down.
we've all been having this conversation for a long time. I've told both of you guys one of my favorite things to do when I'm at these ultras is find the old school people who've been doing it forever and ask them, what's a race that we youngsters are missing out on that's been around forever, that has a culture, and that nobody seems to be doing anymore. Those have always been my favorite kinds of races. So not to accuse you of coming up with this topic, because again, this has been on all of our minds for a long time, but the timing is certainly,
It was perfect. Yeah. I would have liked to roll it out a little bit sooner, but there was kind of a lot of moving parts and busy holiday season. But and the first thing I'll say is like this list is not exhaustive. Like these are not the only old school ultras. I think that wasn't our idea to like have like a list of all the races you could possibly do. I literally had like individual conversations with all of these RDs. So it was like a lot of very time intensive to get them on board. And I really wanted to have races all over the continent. So, Hawaii to Maryland to Tennessee, Georgia, California, Washington, like spread it out pretty well. And then also have it spread pretty evenly on the calendar. But this is really just the beginning. We just wanted to get it out there. The idea behind Old School Ultras really is it's not a series. It's like an anti-series. There's no points or stones or anything to collect. Like you're not going to necessarily qualify for another race, although I guess some of them are like Golden State or Western States qualifying races. But like that's not the point. It's just about really just highlighting and recognizing these pillars of the sport in North America. And we really want to make sure that they not only survive, but thrive in this new age of ultra running. And like Chris said, it's about like connecting old runners with new runners, welcoming in new 50K runners, new ultra runners into the family. And just about the spirit of ultra running, I think like what it was born out of decades ago. And it doesn't need to be like any more complicated than that. It's like as simple as you can make it, basically. And the reason why the magazine is behind it, obviously, I mean, I work for the magazine as the assistant editor, but the magazine is like the definition of old school, right? We've been around for over 40 years now, and it just kind of seems like it makes sense to have that be the launching off, like landing point for a lot of these cool races that a lot of people know about. But I mean, Mountain Mist, maybe no one in the West Coast really knows about it. And the fact that I'm doing it and highlighting it, like then next year there'll be a bunch of other West Coasters out there, or, a race like Strolling Jim, same kind of thing, or even the Headlands, like, hey, let's get some East Coasters out here. So I think the idea is really just about, it's encouraging new runners to check out these old races, or old runners to check out races they haven't made it to yet. Like don't miss out on these in your ultra running career, because they're super special. And I think you'll have a great time going to them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the spotlight for a little while has been in the place that the three of us, we would like to see it change the angle a little bit back to some races that maybe the three of us have had experience at, but also races that if they didn't exist, we wouldn't have what we have now. Right. It's kind of like getting into pop punk without listening to Descendants. Right. It's like you have to understand the root before you go to the new flashy. Hey, this is the now. And I think it can very easily be turned back to, well, now I don't really have to run outside of my region because I have all these awesome smaller, what we consider now smaller race organizations putting on really great events. I don't think the race has to fall under the umbrella of a series like UTMB, or for it to even elicit a ticket to an event for there to be a ton of value in it. My friend Jason Green that has Yeti Trail Runners, he runs some of the most fun ultras I've ever been at, man. And it's rare that they are a ticket to anything, right? It's usually a point to point 50K on the wonderful trail. Or, yeah, maybe you get a Western States golden ticket, but the Yeti 100 is more about the experience on the day. There's no starting line. There's no gun. There's no ribbon to break for the best runners in the event. And if anyone's celebrated, it's the people that are finishing last. There's very little promotion. And I think there's a lot of value in why are you doing it, right? Are you doing it for like great media attention, or wow, the race photos were spectacular, or I got 3 stones so I could get into this next race? Or are you doing it because it's a huge challenge? And I think the history of ultra running has been more about the connection with the community and the challenge of, can I complete this distance? So
I think it's fair to do it in reverse order too, though. Like to get
yeah,
into punk and then realize that you have the obligation to get into the Descendants after that. You know,
sure,
I think it's fair to say, and even commendable, what UTMB has done in terms of drawing more people into the sport. Right? It's putting a spotlight. It's
yeah,
created
absolutely.
celebrity runners, and it's getting more people into the sport. And at this point, I would be willing to bet that the number of people running these races is growing faster than the number of races offered to those people. I don't think quite yet that races like UTMB are cannibalizing runners from the local races. I think they've tried, but I do think that the number of people entering the sport is still high enough that a lot of these races we're talking about don't necessarily need to worry yet. Like, I think both things can exist at this point, but I do worry about the future of it and what that'll mean.
I think that's a good point, and definitely one of the reasons why we started this is like, hey, let's do our best to make sure we support each other, and coming in and saying like, hey, I love what you're doing at your race. I'm not trying to change it. I just want to support you and promote you the best it can so that we can continue to exist in the future and coexist too, which I think, they can for sure. And having someone do it backwards, go to a more bigger corporate international race and then coming to a smaller race and seeing the differences and being able to find a balance in their yearly schedules. I think that's super cool too.
Yeah, not many people.
Yeah, for sure.
Not many people get into the sport because they heard about the Mountain Mist Ultra.
No,
but hopefully
not today. Not today, right?
We're in a unique position in the United States where a lot of people found ultra running because they knew what Western States was, and that's a really unique race because it is big and famous and powerful and has a lot of influence, and it does have a lot of sponsors, but it's technically a nonprofit, right? Whereas. So that's a unique position for like us to be able to look up to that race and get into the sport because of that, which I sure did.
Same, sure.
Yeah, and then that led me to find a lot of other races that share an ethos with Western States and are small and community oriented. And I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily for people to watch a Netflix documentary about Barkley and get into the sport, or watch all these highly produced and amazing YouTube videos about different athletes' experiences at UTMB and CCC and some of these bigger international races, as long as, like you're saying, they eventually get into the Descendants and, go do their big build and get into UTMB and bust that one out and then go explore their local region and don't just retire.
Yeah, I completely agree. And maybe this is good timing for me and Chris to just say, well, it's, hey, without a travel budget, right? Like, given that neither of us are working with a major shoe brand next year, it's kind of a situation. It's like, well, I think I should think about more regional ultras because I'd like to keep doing them, right? So in a way, like, I feel like I'm doing it in the reverse, but in a way, I also feel like I started with the local ultras in my region too and grew towards, well, maybe I'll go run a U.S. national championship like Mad City. Maybe that's a jumping point to the world championships, right? But I think experiencing local ultras, I feel more at home there. Like, I feel like there's more breathing room to enjoy myself. And I would just encourage others to experience races in this, in this collective, the old school ultras. Because I think there's a lot of value in looking at maybe what a person like Andresen or Scott Jurek did years and years ago, right? Or even Tim Tweetmeyer, and say, well, like, what did the schedule look like? Wow, they ran way too cool American River Western States, right? And I live in that region, and my dream is to get into Western States. So why don't you experience some of what they experienced? I mean, those are two wonderful ultras in the California area, right? Way too cool and American River. Fair,
those guys all ran Miwok like 6 weeks before States. And that was considered normal to just bust out a quick Russ Buster 100K in mid-May before doing states. So those folks were insane. Yeah, and easy position for us to be in here, especially me having just had the worst race of my life at UTMB and then getting dropped by Hoka subsequent to that. Easy for me to say fuck UTMB, and I'll say it, but kind of gently. But yeah, I am looking forward to having a year of local stuff, not just because I don't have a travel budget anymore to go internationally, but all my bucket list races that I have been wanting to do, they're all local. Like I'm doing the Bear this year. That's one of those races that the old timers I've been talking to, specifically Luis Escobar, let's call him by his name. Everyone's been telling me to do the Bear forever, and I'm so stoked to go experience that one. It's super popular with Missoula residents where I live now. Cascade Crest, I'll get down there or over there probably next year. Angeles Crest, like, are you kidding? There's just so many races that I've been wanting to do, and honestly have had pressure to go internationally and races that I didn't necessarily connect with. I cherish the experience and have gone a lot of amazing places and had great times out at those races, but it's time to kind of do the home circuit, and I'm pumped for that more than I ever was to go internationally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said for doing the races that you really, really want to do, that you feel connected to, that you've heard about through your idols and through, the people that you respect in the sport for years and years. And probably be really refreshing and rejuvenating for you to kind of take a step back or not even a step back, just going a different direction, and pursuing it for the reasons that are really meaningful to you.
Yeah, I think looking at the events and saying what attracts me as a person, what is also logistically something I've been wanting to do for a long time, but also have been drawn in this other direction is important, right? Hey, in the Southeast, man, like Long Haul 100, right? Daytona 100, Keys 100. These are all events that they have a draw. It's a different type of tough, right? Whether it's weather or whether it's flat terrain, I think that every person in the region that they're in should be thinking about, well, what are some options I have right around the corner? Because there's a ton of value in supporting the race organizations in your community.
Yeah. I mean, we could legitimately have like old school ultra regions and have, probably 50 or 100 races where it's like, what you mentioned in the Southeast, and then like even more in the West. I mean, the list is endless, really. And I could see it growing to that in future years as well.
Awesome. So Jeff, kind of circling back a little bit to your RDing and what that's going to be looking like this year. How can people become involved in kind of the prep for Headlands 50K? Do you have some weekends coming up sometime during the course of the year where there's like some course preview options, and or if people are curious about the course, what are you doing as race director in general to just be there for people that are interested in the race, and how can they sign up? How can they learn more?
Yeah, those are great questions. We are definitely going to have at minimum 3 course preview runs on Saturdays in July, June, and May. So kind of in the build up towards the race, starting off at San Francisco Running Company in Mill Valley, which is a great community. We will get out and you can just basically run from the store and get on the course. So that's definitely the best way to preview it with people who know the area and know the trails. In terms of reaching out with any sort of questions regarding the race, I'm always available. You can email me, rd@headlands50k.com. Registration has not quite opened yet, although maybe it will be open by the time the podcast drops. But that'll be also at headlands50k.com. And yeah, I mean, the announcement of the 50K National Championship comes with a pretty exciting new title sponsor in the form of Nike Trail, who I think is really invested at getting involved in kind of these local community events, and they're going to put a lot of time and energy into making it a really great experience for everyone involved. So any of those avenues are great ways to get more information, check out the course. We'll release those course preview runs dates in the new year. And then in terms of getting prepared, I mean, I think you're teeing that one up for you and Chris right here. But excited about this partnership with you guys and having you guys become the official coaching services of the Headlands 50K too.
Yeah, with Chris having experience on the course, and both of us, having experience working with runners that are doing their first 50K or challenging themselves for, really high level performances, like whether you're looking at this as a national championship or an opportunity to run your first one. I think, between the two of us and Nicole, we've kind of got a plethora of different options in terms of three coaches that have had like very different experience and CV as ultra runners, and also three different voices. I think that's important, is kind of getting to know, hey, does this coach fit well for me? Is this someone from a communication perspective that can, just convey, the message? What do I need to understand in order to have a performance like I'd like to have? So, we'd love to, chat with individuals of all levels and work with you towards your first 50K or a really high level performance at the national championship. So, but yeah, we're excited for the partnership too, Jeff. I'm stoked to kind of see where it goes and support, what me and Chris think of as, one of the old school ultras in the States. And yeah, man.
Hopefully you guys can fit it into your now more wide open schedules of 2024.
Yeah, easy there.
Hey, easy. This guy's got the bear coming up, man.
I got the bear, buddy. Yeah, I don't know what I'm in late August yet, but it's definitely tempting to come back and try that one out, especially if I'm coaching a couple athletes who are going to be racing it. It would be pretty sweet to get out there for that race, whether I'm running it or just there to hang.
Yeah, I think it's worth highlighting, like, one of the really rad things about this race, and I'm not sure if you remember, Chris, but the start finish is in this giant private meadow that is just super intimate. There's barbecue pits, there's a stage, there's a creek that runs through. We'll have music, beer, food, hydration. It'll just be a great place to hang out. And I think, that's one of the things that maybe gets lost in some of the newer races that are really big and grand and have all this kind of like hoopla around them. Like, these races, it's like more about hanging out after you finish and cheering everyone in than really the actual race itself. Like, you'll probably spend, at least in a 50K, as much time, if not more, hanging out after you run the race than the time you actually spent running the race, which, I don't know, that's what ultra running is all about to me.
Yeah, this race and that start finish area that you're talking about, it really strikes me as something that would not be permitted if this race, if you were trying to start this race this year. Like, it's such a unique and, like you said, intimate spot to have a start finish area that I feel like bringing that up as a possible area for a start finish would be a non-starter with the permitting agencies nowadays. But the fact that it's been going on for 22 plus years, before ultra running was a major sport in the area, let alone the rest of the country. I don't know. I feel like the legacy is part of the the reality of it continuing there.
Yeah, it definitely helps. And the previous race directors, Diana Fitzpatrick, who I'm sure you guys know of, she helped foster and maintain that relationship. So shout out to them for having the foresight for that. And we're just all stewards of these and trying to keep them going for as long as we can for everyone else.
Yeah, Jeff, we're excited to see how the new collective there, right, the Old School Ultras grows, and how you as a race director grow. And we're stoked on the partnership, man. I think it's going to be a great year, and ideally, me and Chris will get a chance to come out and support you and see race day go down. Maybe we'll both be in the race running too. Well, who knows?
Well, if you make it out, I got your lodging covered to ease the pain. So.
Yeah, baby.
Perfect. We'll have to find a show in the region too for the three of us to go enjoy. Indeed. Well, awesome, guys. Thanks so much for joining today. Down in the bio for everyone that listened today, I'm going to have links to Jeff's email, the Headlands 50K website and kind of where you can sign up with the ultra sign up links. We'll also have links to our coaching services for anyone that's interested in working with us as coaches this season. We're just excited to support, an old school American Ultra, and yeah, we're excited for the partnership, man. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for joining today, and thanks for everybody that listened. We'll chat
right on,
next
brother.
time.
Thank you.